Well, I did a video collection of my concert tickets, so I thought I would do one of the playbills that I have from the plays and musicals that I've seen. I've got about 15 or 20 missing. I don't know if they're misplaced, lost, or I just never got them. And because a lot of them playbills don't have the year on them, and I'm too lazy to go get my tickets and match up the tickets with the years and put them in order that I saw them. I just decided to put them in alphabetical order, so the years jump back and forth. So I'm going to start with the ones that I've misplaced or lost or haven't had the playbills for. The first one, starting with the A's, was an ABBA show that I saw at New York, New York. And I was really excited to see it. And the ticket wasn't that much. It was like $15, $20, something like that. And the theater was small, and I had a front row seat. But I have to say I was really disappointed with their ABBA show. There was no story to it, and there was, first of all, they sang the canned music, and that turned me off. I didn't like that. There was also no story to the songs, and they interwove, instead of all ABBA songs, they also interwove songs from the 70s era, the ABBA era, which I didn't like that either. I thought they should have, sung all the ABBA songs first, and then maybe as an encore, then perform the other ABBA era songs. So that's one thing I didn't like about it. The canned music, the fact that it wasn't all ABBA in the ABBA section, and being in the first row, I could see like the costumes, and the costumes are really cheaply made, and that sort of put me off too. and one song, though, good thing came out of it was the song Chiquitita. A friend of mine had always said, oh, Chiquitita is one of my favorite songs, and I couldn't ever be bothered with it for some reason. But then I heard it there, and it really stood out to me, and I said, oh my God, I love Chiquitita now. And I was so disappointed with the ABBA production that when it was over, I asked for my money back, and they did eventually give me my money back. And it didn't last very long, and I suspect it didn't last very long because, again, there was no story to it, and it was a little... The idea was good, but they didn't carry it out very well. It could have been much better than it was. It was a missed opportunity. Then I think I saw Arsenic and Old Lace in Edinburgh, and that I enjoyed, that play. The movie with Cary Grant, and I always enjoyed the movie, so I enjoyed the play very much. These two little old ladies who I think they run a boarding house or something like that, and then they poison their guests, and their nephew discovers, what they're up to, and there's all kinds of hilarity ensues. So yes, I enjoyed Arsenic and Old Lace. Then I saw a Blue Man Group in Las Vegas at, where did I see them? I think it was at the Luxor. And I had been going to Las Vegas with a couple of women with whom I worked. And they were high rollers, so we would always get picked up in a limousine, and we'd get our rooms and our meals and shows comped. And we would always stay at New York, New York, because that's where one of the women's casino host was based. And I was going to Las Vegas by myself this time, so I brought... when I told my friend that I was going, she said, well, why don't you bring some Vermont maple syrup with you and give it to our my casino host, Johnny Kincaid, and I met him at New York, in front of the Americana restaurant, and gave him the Vermont maple syrup, and he comped me a ticket to Blue Man Group. And I'd always wanted to see them because I like bright colors, and I can always remember seeing, advertisements on TV where they're playing like the drums and things, and this liquid was splashing up this fluorescent liquid, and that always intrigued me. So I'd always wanted to see Blue Man Group, and I thoroughly enjoyed the show, and they brought people up to participate, and I always thought that was probably part of the act, that they weren't people from the audience, they were plants. And the very next day I was crossing the street on the Strip, and I saw one of the women that they brought up, and I said, "Oh, you're the Blue Man Group lady." And she said, "Yeah." And I said, did they really pick you from the audience? And she said, "Yeah." And so I said, "Oh, that was pretty neat that they do include people from the audience." Then, let me see, I saw Guys and Dolls in London. This was like the year before the Olympics were going to be held in London, and I was staying at a hotel near Piccadilly Circus, and the theater was near Piccadilly Circus. And I've never really cared for Guys and Dolls that much. I remember seeing the movie with Marlon Brando and Frank Sinatra, and it was just okay. But the reason I decided to see it was because Ewan McGregor was starring in it, or I always call him Ewan McGregor because that's how his name is spelled, Ewan. And I enjoyed it. It was fine. It was fun to see Ewan. I sort of remember when I was, I don't remember if I was on my way to the theater to get the tickets or whatever, but my memory of that was that I was walking down the street and a button popped off of my shorts, and I can't remember if I couldn't find the button or whatever, but then I had to go back to my hotel room and either sew that button on or find another button to sew on my shorts. So that's what I remember from my Guys and Dolls experience. I also saw, starting with the K's, or the only K was Ka, a mysterious show in Las Vegas. It was playing at MGM Grand, and I was excited to see that because it was like a martial arts themed one. And I remember too, before the same day I had seen Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet at I think it was the Mirage, and they were absolutely fabulous. And usually shows last about an hour and a half, but theirs went well beyond 2 hours, and it went so long that I eventually had to leave before it was over, after like the 2 hour mark, because then I had to get from the Mirage down to MGM Grand and take the bus. So I was disappointed I didn't get to see all of Steve and Edie. And by the time I got to the MGM, I missed like the first 15 minutes of Ka. And I was disappointed with Ka because it was mostly just standing and posing was my memory of it. There were two segments that I thought stood out. One I can't remember, and the other one was like these shadow puppets people made with their hands, which I thought were quite amazing. But most of the acrobatics couldn't compare to some of the other shows. So I was disappointed with Ka. I saw Les Miserables in London. When I was in college, I took a trip to London, a school trip for 3 weeks. And the first musical I ever saw was Les Mis. And as soon as we were sightseeing all day, so as soon as I sat down in the theater and the lights went out, all of a sudden I got so sleepy, I just could hardly keep my eyes open. But I remembered that Les Mis, the story was so good, and all the songs were so good that I was able to stay awake, even though I wanted nothing more than just close my eyes and go to sleep. And then I saw Les Mis a second time, like maybe 10 years later in London again. And it had been a long time since I'd seen it. And I thought, well, I want to see that again. And strangely enough, or luckily enough, or however you want to categorize it, for a 2-week period, one of the Jonas brothers was playing the Marius role. I think it was Joe Jonas, but I'm not 100% positive. So if anybody wants to comment and verify that, please do. It might have been Nick Jonas too, but I think it was Joe, and he was fine. I mean, he can't compete with Michael Ball, who I think originated the role, but he didn't embarrass himself, and it was fine. You know, Les Mis is just one of the perfect musicals because it's got a great story. So the story just on its own merits is very interesting and draws you in, but then the music is so fabulous. Every single song's a winner. You know, the melodies, catchy lyrics, you know, they just stay in your head. So that's one of the reasons why Les Mis is just one of the greatest musicals ever. Then I saw Le Rêve at the Wynn in Las Vegas, and that's a Cirque-like show, and I was told that it's by the people who are behind the Cirque du Soleil shows, but for contractual reasons they can't call it a Cirque show. And it's the poor man's version, I guess you could say, of O. And I've never seen O only because the tickets are so expensive. I didn't want to pay $150 for a nosebleed seat. But I thoroughly enjoyed Le Rêve. And the Wynn Theater is very nice because it's not too big. And the seats are staggered so that instead of looking at the back of somebody's head, you're looking between the two heads, so you don't have an obstructed view, especially if somebody's particularly tall who's sitting in front of you. So the Wynn Theater is very well thought out. Let me see. Oh, then I saw Love Never Dies, which was the sequel to Phantom of the Opera. I saw that in London. And I happened with what's his name? Ramin Karalu was in that. And I did not like that at all. They based the story in Coney Island around the turn of the the beginning of the 1900s, which I thought that was a great location for it because it's sort of exotic, if you will. But the story itself was just awful. They inverted everything. So in Phantom of the Opera, the heroine's love interest is a hero and eventually saves her. And I think Michael Ball played that character too in Phantom of the Opera. And, supposedly they live happily ever after. But in the sequel, Love Never Dies, they get married and she has a child, but apparently it's not his child, it's the Phantom's child. So he sort of turns against her and the child and becomes, I think, an alcoholic and a gambler and just a ne'er-do-well. And the rapist, Phantom, is sort of like the hero, so to speak, and I just hated the story. And none of the songs were memorable at all. There's one, Till I Hear You Sing Again, or something like that, which maybe you could consider a modest hit, but I don't think anybody can name any of the other songs from Love Never Dies. Then I remember seeing Mamma Mia on Broadway, and I think it had just opened, so it was sold out, so I was able to get a standing room ticket. And I got standing room tickets for several shows that I saw. And you stand at the very back of the theater, and sometimes you can get lucky, and there are no shows, and you can grab a seat that's close to the back of the theater. I can't remember whether I did for Mamma Mia or not. And Mamma Mia was just okay. I didn't care for the story. I thought the story was so lame. It was just stupid. And the best part of it was the very end when the cast comes out dressed up in, ABBA outfits and does a mini ABBA concert. I thought that was fabulous. That was the best part of Mamma Mia as far as I was concerned. Then the first Cirque show I ever saw was Mystere. I saw that twice, that playing at Treasure Island, and I got those tickets comped. And Mystere is just wonderful. The acrobatics, I loved everything about it. That's why I saw it twice. Then I've seen Phantom of the Opera twice. I saw it in New York, and I just loved it, of course. And then then I saw it again, maybe about 10 years later, just before I was going to see Love Never Dies. I thought, well, I'll see Phantom and refresh my memory. And, of course, thoroughly enjoyed it, but then was totally disappointed with Love Never Dies. In London, I saw Priscilla, Queen of the Jungle. I absolutely loved it. I saw it twice, in fact. Not only did I see it twice, I second-halved it twice. And I had an acquaintance named John whom I'd met in a pub a couple of years earlier. And, and then the next year, and then that year, I'd run into him again. And I said, I'm going to see Priscilla. Do you want to second-half it with me? And at first he said, yeah, I will. Then he chickened out. So he missed out on seeing, the second half of a really fun show. I think Jason Donovan was in that. I just love Priscilla, Queen of the Jungle. It's just so much fun. Then in London, I saw The Woman in White. It's a play. And the reason that I saw it was, I was looking for something to see, and I didn't know what I wanted to see, and that had been playing for like 15 or 20 years straight, so I thought, well, it must be very good. And so I saw it, and I have to say, it was just okay. It wasn't scary at all. I don't know what the appeal is that it would have been playing for several decades straight. And I think... I think a movie was made a few years ago with Daniel Radcliffe. I think he starred in it. Again, if I'm wrong, somebody correct me in the comments. But it was just okay. Then I remember I saw Tommy, and of course in New York. Tommy's, of course, very good, great music, a fun story. So you can't go wrong with that, especially with the music. Then I saw in London, I was so excited to see this. I can't remember whether it was called Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory or Willy Wonka or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, whatever. Because I love both the Willy Wonka movie and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie. I love them both equally. And they both have such terrific songs. Well, boy, was I ever disappointed with this. Oh, my goodness. I was sorry that I'd spent the money to see it. And I was so disappointed. First of all, it had all new songs, and none of the songs were nearly as catchy as the songs in either of the two movies. And then they couldn't leave well enough alone. Good Lord, they had to change the story. Like, I can't remember which of the two girls, whether it was the Violet character or whatever, she was a young African-American aspiring rap artist in this one, which... what does being a rap artist have to do with the story? How does that enhance it in any way, shape, or form? And then the Mike TV character, they decided he had ADHD, and that I thought was just stupid and didn't add to the story in any way. And if you're going to change a story, you have to at least improve it if you're going to do that. Because if it's not an improvement, then why fix something that ain't broke? And it just ruined it. The crappy songs, the change in the story, I just left there feeling very disappointed in that. And it didn't last very long. And I don't think it ever made it to Broadway. I'm not sure if it did. And if it did make it to Broadway, it opened and closed pretty quickly because it was just crappy. Then the last of the ones that I don't have, at least the ones that I can remember, that I don't have playbills for, was Zumanity, that I had seen at New York. And I saw it with 3 or 4 women, and it's supposed to be very sexy, but I found it boring. None of the acrobatics were impressive. The women liked it, so it's sort of like a chick flick, I guess you could say. Yeah, so I would be interested to know if men in general find it appealing. I did not. Like I said, the women that I saw it with did. I left out my review of Blood Brothers, and I recorded it and then accidentally accidentally erased it from YouTube, which pisses me off to no end. So now I've got to redo it. And of course, the second go around isn't going to be as good as the first, but what can you do? Whether or not I insert it into the main video or tack it on at the end, which I'm probably going to do because I'm too lazy to do the editing. So I was in London, and I was looking for something else to see, and I'd either seen pretty much everything else that was available, and so I decided upon Blood Brothers because it had been running for like, I don't know, 15 or 20 years straight. And I remember a couple of women that I knew talking about and saying how much they loved it. So I said, okay, I'll see Blood Brothers. And I just found it was okay. The story was sort of interesting, but the music wasn't memorable except for the one song, the Marilyn Monroe song. And if you're going to have a musical and it's going to be widely successful, it's got to have catchy lyrics, catchy music, and a good story. And it had the relatively good story, but the music just didn't cut it for me for the most part. And it's a story about this poor woman who's sort of, I think, a maid or something, working for a rich family, and she already has a son, or she gets pregnant and she's going to have fraternal twins or something like that. And when the child or children are born, she can't afford both of them, so she adopts one of the children. She adopts out to the family that she's working for, and whether it's one of the twins or the younger of the two sons, I don't recall. And if anybody knows, of course, please mention it in the comments. Because it's, my God, years and years ago now that I saw Blood Brothers. And so the two brothers have, they know each other from town or something, but they don't know that they're brothers. And eventually they fall for the same girl, and I think one either deliberately kills the other out of jealousy or accidentally kills the other. I can't remember how it goes. And so, of course, everybody's devastated, and I think the girl probably, I don't remember if she ends up marrying the surviving brother or how that goes. But, the story wasn't bad. One thing I found irritating was that the adult sons played themselves as children in the beginning, which I found a little bit irritating. And I know it's just theater and you have to use your imagination to imagine the adult men as young boys, but that sort of took me out of the story a bit because it was sort of silly. And the mother has been played by quite a few known actresses and singers over the years. Helen Reddy, Carole King, Petula Clark, to name a few. So it has a bit of a pedigree as far as the actresses playing the mother goes. Nobody of note played any of the roles that I can recall when I saw it. And, because the songs are just so-so, you have to more or less enjoy it as a play rather than a musical, is my take on it. And I would have classified it as like Zumanity. When I saw Zumanity at New York, New York, it's more of a chick flick. I have to wonder, and any guys who have seen it, comment, did you find it sort of as lackluster as I did, or am I sort of the odd man out thinking that it's basically a chick flick and appeals mostly to women? And that's my take on Blood Brothers. I have another one to tack on at the end. It fell off my stack of playbills when it was on the floor. This is 110 Degrees in the Shade, of course, with the fabulous Audra McDonald. She won a Tony for this as well, and I think it was based upon a movie, or the movie was based upon the musical. It was with Katharine Hepburn and oh my goodness, Burt Lancaster, I think. The Rainmaker, I think that's what it was called. And she plays a spinster who sort of has this hots for I think a widowed sheriff or something like that. And they're living in the desert or something, and it hasn't rained in a long time, and then this charlatan comes to town who says that he can make it rain, and So that's basically the premise of the musical. I had a really good seat. I was like second or third or fourth row, so I could see the faces of all the actors very well. And I noticed how all of the actors were very, very good. They were acting the hell out of this musical. And if you were sitting further back or in the balconies, you really can't see their faces. So they, for all you know, could be phoning in the performance and you wouldn't really know unless they were doing a terrible job. But nobody was phoning anything in here. They were just acting their hearts out. And I could see it on their faces and was really impressed with their, not only are they performers, but they were, truly acting on stage. This was a good show.